All right, we're on. Thanks everybody for tuning in. I appreciate you guys taking the time to listen to this. Guest with me today, his name is Cam Dietz. He is a strength and conditioning coach at Utah Valley. He works primarily with men's baseball, women's softball, golf teams, and the men's soccer team. So I'll kind of pass the baton over to Cam and let him kind of tell you guys his experience, how he got where he's at, and yeah, take it away, Cam.
Yep. So I came to Utah Valley in 2019 in August. Like we said, work with mostly throwing sports, swinging sports, and then men's soccer took over in January. Before that, I was a professional intern at North Texas for the summer before there. And then I was a GA at University of Northern Colorado for 2 years before that in the Big Sky with Coach Ratelle here. He may have been playing, but we were in the Big Sky at the same time. And then and when I was there, assisted with pretty much everything minus cross country. So I had time as a GA to really get to work with everybody. And that was, I think, a huge benefit. But football was in charge of tennises there. And then track and field. So I was working at my old high school. And I actually got offered the head baseball coaching job the day after I accepted being a GA at Northern Colorado. So I was working there as an assistant coach doing strength and conditioning there. Before that, interned at my alma mater for a buddy of mine, Jeff. And then before that, I was an intern for the summer at the University of Delaware. So got my undergrad degree from UCCS. Both degrees are in like exercise science, BS and Master's of Science. And then played a little ball in college. So
Cool. So working with baseball, so I played baseball in high school. I've never worked with a baseball team though. But I remember like when I was in high school playing, my high school coaches would always say, don't lift upper body, don't press overhead, don't do a lot of general or like traditional weight room stuff.
right.
I guess what's your experience with the coaching staff that you've had working with baseball teams? Are they pro strength training, resistance training? Like how has that experience been?
So UVU, Utah Valley, and Northern Colorado, where I came from, they both are in the WAC in baseball. So I remember I sat down in Coach Madsen's office and we were talking a little bit, have you worked with baseball? Where have you been? And he said, you were in Northern Colorado, right? I said, yeah. And he goes, we play at the same altitude, and they hit, almost twice as many home runs as us last year. I said, yeah. And he goes, so we need to get stronger. Like we are too weak. And when those guys show up, like they're big dudes. Like Northern Colorado, if there's one thing that their baseball team is, big ass dudes. I remember hearing stories like they would play at Nebraska every other year, and the Nebraska head coach, one of the biggest compliments he would give is he'd go up to to Carl, our baseball coach at UNC, and he'd say, "Man, you got some big dudes, like big ass dudes." And every time they'd come back, and he'd tell my boss Jimmy, he'd go, "I don't know what you guys are doing, but they're big in Nebraska. Like that, like they're big. Keep them big. We don't give a shit. Just keep them big." So like it's been good where I haven't had to fight a coach or argue with a coach about, trying to get some size on the guys. That was our big goal in January. I thought we did a really good job this fall when I first came in, getting them really, really strong. And with that, their jumps were better. They were running faster, all those kinds of things. But really it was about having these guys, encouraging them to put some weight on and keep it on through January, February, and until we got shut down, somewhere in March, April. But so they love it. Position players traditionally like to lift a little bit heavier. They're kind of the meatheads of the team. And then you've got pitchers, and some of those guys are just freakish athletes. And luckily our culture here is they really get after it. So.
Mm-hmm. Do you do anything different with pitchers versus position players, or do they all do the same thing?
Yeah, so this first year, so our weight room is I came into a situation that's a little different. Yeah, I was baseball's fourth strength coach in 12 months. Um, so and our weight room's new, but it's also inside of the kind of training dome. That's where I'm at now. So if that background noise is the fans, the air conditioning. But when I came in, it's a smaller weight room. It's trying to establish something that hasn't been a habit. One guy training you is not something that they're used to. So for this first year, we did pretty much everything the same. I will say that a lot of times with pitchers, especially when we got to in season, if they wanted to do alternatives to certain things, we would talk. I'm a big, heavy chin up guy. And so a lot of my pitchers would rather do pull downs, especially in season. So, I'll let them do neutral grip lat pull down and stuff instead of a neutral grip chin up. But, we would adjust that way. In season, I'm looking at the calendar right now before I got canceled. But, in season, the position players would lift 2 to 3 times a week whenever they could in between like midweek games. And then the pitchers, like I had our starting pitchers, our Friday night guy, he would lift Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and then potentially Wednesday. So he would do a little bit every day, kind of that microdosing thought. That's used a lot with basketball, rather than doing 2 or 3 heavy lifts in a week. So
yeah, we don't have a baseball team here,
right.
So I have no idea what the typical college baseball schedule is like. Are they playing 5 games a week sometimes?
Yeah. So let's see. Just because I have it in front of me. So we had the busiest week was actually one of the last weeks that we had. So we had Friday, Saturday, Sunday at University of Washington. They flew back. I think Sunday night we lifted Monday. They played Air Force on Tuesday and Wednesday. They had Thursday off, and then they played Friday, Saturday, Sunday against Boise State. And that Boise State weekend was actually the one that was canceled. Like that was when Corona actually shut everything down. But in that, they would have had 2 off days. They would have played 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 in 9 days, or 10 days. And so, yeah, they're busy. And I think that, the starters, position guys, they really got fatigued really quick. And that's something that I'll adjust to next year.
Yeah.
Especially in these heavy, when they play those midweek games, it just changed everything up. If you play one Friday, one Saturday, one Sunday, it's not as bad because you got 4 days in between. You got a day off. You got 2 or 3 lifts there. But when you're playing 2 midweek games, it's a lot. So it's an adjustment that I need to make for next year. So.
Do the guys who don't get a lot of playing time, do they lift on game days? Like if they know they're not in the lineup ever?
No, but I want it to be. The problem with that is, so we actually are lucky to have a weight room in the baseball stadium. It's small, so we don't train there as a team, but I want the guys to want to do that. So yeah. I'm in a position with 5 sports that I don't travel with baseball. I don't travel with anybody right now. But I'm not in a position that, I'm going to highly encourage them to do it, but they've also got to take some ownership in their development. If they're the second or third string catcher or whatever the case is, and they want to get some extra work in, they will. I mean, we have a freshman catcher that traveled on the road with the team last year, and he was lifting with the pitchers on the road because the Friday guy will do what, we'll kind of assess what we've got in the hotel. Me from Utah all the way to Washington, right? And whatever they've got access to, I'll write them something to do Saturday.
Do you travel
and
with them then?
No, I don't.
Oh,
yeah,
okay,
so I don't travel. So it's more of a, hey, when you guys get there, like I'll talk to some of the upperclassmen. I'll say, hey, when you guys get to the hotel, send me a picture of what the weight room looks like, and I'll come up with something. I'll almost always send them with, they'll have J bands and stuff. I'll try and send them with like TRX straps, that kind of thing. But like their normal split is, if you're talking like high-low, the Friday guy, the day after he plays, he'll do a light lift with some really light cardio. and then he'll have his heavy lift the day after that, and then a like medium lift. So kind of that undulated training just flipped around a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, I think each sport's so different with the way that their schedule is. Like football is one game a week.
Right.
Programming for football in season is really not that hard because, they're playing on Saturday, depending on where you're at, teams are either going to lift Sunday, take Monday off, or take Sunday off, lift Monday, and then one or two lift like during the week. So football isn't too crazy, but like my experience working with tennis, a lot of times they'll travel Thursday, then they'll have matches Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and it
Right.
varies. It varies between who's playing Friday, Saturday. Like some of them play all 3 days, some of them play Saturday, Sunday, some of them play Friday only. And then my experience with basketball and volleyball is still same kind of chaotic in the way they travel. And so I always find it really interesting the way certain coaches kind of program in season when teams are traveling different days, traveling overnight, coming back to campus at 4 a.m, and then they're training that same day. Like you gotta be able to handle all that and manage all that stuff. So yeah, I think baseball is for sure with different position players, like pitchers are obviously their performance is different pitching than a position player who it's just
Right.
different. It's so much different from position to position than say basketball. Everybody pretty much does the same thing on a basketball court. Maybe there's some differences between guards and bigs, but no, I think baseball is really interesting. I would love to work with a baseball team and just get that experience. And then so you're working with softball too. So is the traveling with softball and the way you program for them, the way you manage their in-season training very similar to baseball, or how do you do that?
Yeah, so softball, their off season looks really similar, or it did. So when I first got here, TJ was here, and he left at the end of the semester to go to UTEP. So we had a new coach come in January, which is tough timing, but personal decisions, and you got to adjust, right? So when the new coach came in, I remember when I met Stacy, she said, she goes, what do you think? What makes sense to you in season for a softball team? And same thing. I truly believe that if you're, especially if you're in season or preseason with a team, I think I really like microdosing. I really like doing a little bit more often than trying to fit what you would fit into a week into 2 days. You have to
Yeah.
perform, whether it's practice or these non-conference games. We didn't make it all the way to conference, but you have to perform at your best more often. And so, I told her that, and she said, "Do you want them 5 days a week?" And I said, "Yeah, like let's go." So I took we've got Monday through Friday, and now going into this fall, like I said, when I first got here, I was working with them 3 days a week. Baseball was 4 days a week, and I'll have baseball 4 days a week, I think, and softball will be 5 days a week in the off season. And I think part of it has become, it is now a part of their culture. It's a part of what they do. Like they knew they had an optional lift when they got back. They got back from Mexico and they did really well. Like they beat everybody but Oregon on this trip. They beat George Washington. Like they had an incredible season. So they come back from this trip to Mexico, and I just reached out to the seniors and I said, like, you guys were gone for like 5 or 6 days. You didn't do any resistance training. Like I want you guys to get back in as soon as you guys feel comfortable. And I'm not trying to force you guys to come in, but like the sooner you guys get in, the sooner we can get back to doing a little bit every day instead of you guys come back and I feel like I need to give you guys too much, right? And I think that's where, less is better, especially in season. I don't think it takes as the gains or whatever success that you've built as I've thought in the past. I think now that I'm getting older and getting more used to programming and understanding, what it looks like in season, like you said, for all these different teams, I don't think you need to do as much. But I still encourage them to come back. And the day after they got back from however long that flight is, 5-6 hours, they came in and they were working out. And I would tell them, like, you guys are working harder than every single team in the WAC. Like, I can guarantee that I work those girls harder than any other team in the WAC, because I have seen other softball teams lift 3 times a week out of season or in off season, and then 2 times a week in season. Like, I've seen it. I've seen it at the places that I've been, and I know if we're lifting 5 times a week, we're getting quality work in, and I still have them for an hour, and the last part of that hour, gives me the chance to do some more um, specific, kind of I really like self, like myofascial release, like ART almost, with tennis balls and lacrosse balls and some foam rolling, stuff like that. I'll work in some end range lift off, like external shoulder rotation with a partner. With baseball, all those kinds of things, it gives me more time to do it. And so if I have 5 hours a week to do it, it really gives me a chance to do some parasympathetic breathing for recovery and, do some extra stuff that I wouldn't normally do it. At the same time, I know that we're working harder than the other teams that we're playing. And I think that that's something that they bought into, loved, enjoyed. They fucking wanted to be there. And I think that's probably the greatest thing that happened. And it was, hey, we flew back, we're going in, we're going to work. Like, I don't care whether it's, our mandatory day off, like, we work out as a team when we get back, because Cam says this is going to help us. And so far we've had the best record that we've had in Division I history. Let's keep it going. So
yeah. Do they, I guess softball or baseball, do they lift before practice, after practice, 6 a.m.? Like, what's their lifting time? Do they have to share facilities? And if so, logistically, how does that kind of play out on your side of things? How does all that go?
Yeah, so baseball got the kind of shit into the stick with 6 a.m., which, I mean, it has pros and cons. Like, I'm a big sleep guy, and I know I've got some turds that don't sleep enough, but at the same time, you come in at 6 because, we've got these smaller teams spread throughout, that it makes more sense for them to get in later, right? And so they lift from 6 to 7, but that also is nice because it gives them time to go home, eat something before they go to treatment around 10:30, and then practice around 11:30. So they've got a break in there where they can eat if they're supposed to. And that's kind of, like I said, in the fall, we didn't emphasize it, and I think that it was a detriment. And in the spring, we emphasized it, and we had guys put on, some of them put on some bad weight, but most of them put on good weight, and we're finally eating, more than twice a day. And so baseball's got a couple hours in between, which can be good, which can be bad, because if they fall asleep, they'll sleep through some of their classes too.
Yeah. So all their classes are afternoon then, huh? Afternoon
Yeah,
and
for the
night?
most part. I know some of the guys have, occasionally a pitcher will have a class that's during, like, the second half of practice. But, like, if you're a pitcher, it's not great for the team aspect of it. But if you're a pitcher, you come in, you warm up, you throw your bullpen, you get out, you go to class. Like, if you have to, sure. But for the most part, everybody's got afternoon classes, whereas softball, last semester they lifted right before practice. So they would lift 2:30 to 3:30, and then they would practice 3:30 to 5-ish every day, except for their mandatory days off. But so they would lift right before practice, and for them it was, the nutrition piece was like, hey, like, when you guys come in, and there's some things I want to do, like, obviously we don't have nearly as much as I had at Northern Colorado when it came to nutrition, but we've got some protein thanks to Optimum Nutrition, and so we've got a bunch of protein. I'll buy chocolate milk in gallons, and they'll just make shakes because I got them all bottles and stuff. And so they'll make shakes in between lifting and practice. I think one of the things that I want to implement, I know that like energy chews and gels and stuff are getting, like, really popular, especially with court sports right now. I'm not going to go out of my way to say, coach, like, we got to have this. But I think one of the things I'm going to do this year is, for baseball and softball, I'm going to have Gatorade for sure in the weight room. So, like, if we get there at 6 and the guys didn't eat something before they came, at least you can get 200 calories of carbs right before, carbs, sugar, whatever. At some point, I'm not going to fight the battle of of course, I wish I could give you guys a buffet of, oatmeal and shit and fruit and whatever. But, like, I can't. So if I can get you guys, some carbs or some sugar as soon as you guys get in, because it's 6 or 7 in the morning, then that's better than not having anything. So I think I'm going to do that this year, because it really isn't that much more work to fill up, a 10-gallon cooler with Gatorade and just make sure we have it. So
Yeah. With those two teams, softball and baseball, do you have specific KPIs that you're testing for annually? Whether it's, I don't know, vertical jump or trap bar deadlift, 1 rep max, like anything. What do you
right.
look for testing wise?
So my biggest thing is the pitchers. I want to know their velocities. I want to know that their velocities are up, their pitching velocities are up, because that translates to the field. If we tested like exit velocity with the baseball with the hitters, I would care about that too. But like within the weight room, we'll do a standing just a standing arm swing, counter movement, jump, whatever. I always get them confused, but just whatever, jump as high as you can on.
Yeah.
And we'll do that at least once a week, I think, and we'll test it once a week just to kind of auto-regulate and see how we're feeling and stuff. We have Fusionetics, so we use the daily readiness scores and stuff like that too. But, you've got people that just, wake up and just 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, whatever. And like maybe they're not actually feeling that way, but they know they have to fill it out, right?
Mm-hmm.
So getting the jumps like that. And then we'll max front squat and we'll max trap bar deadlift.
Okay.
Those are our big strength things.
Yeah. And that's for both softball and baseball?
Yeah, both softball and baseball. Like I said, their off seasons are super similar.
Yeah.
It'll change now, but I'm a big triphasic guy. So like we do the things we do. And if the split's a little bit different because somebody's in 3 days versus 4 days, then so be it. But we'll do the things that we do. We're trying to push the ground away from us when we're trap bar deadlifting. And we've got those whatever the one they've got a little bit longer handle, but they're super long. The really big trap bars, they weigh like 85 pounds. So we'll get after it, and they like being able to. I've got 2 softball girls that deadlift 400 pounds with those. So I'm happy with it. They get something heavy in their hands. So those are our big 2 strength movements. We don't max bench or anything like that.
Okay. So the Fusionetics, I've honestly never heard of that. I'm assuming it's just a daily questionnaire. Is that right?
Yeah. So Fusionetics is the brand, and it's like FMS.
Okay.
So it's a movement screen originally, and then they added this kind of daily readiness thing
All right.
to it. So within the questionnaire, it's like I can pull it up too. But within the questionnaire, it's like how on a scale of 1 to 10, how well did you sleep last night?
Yeah.
What's your readiness, which I think is the worst one, am I ready for the day, I guess, like that one's shit. But like, I really look at how much they got, and I look at how stressed they are, that kind of thing. So it comes up with a value of 1 to 100 for their readiness. And really, like, if you fill it out consistently, like I had softball fill it out all 75 days before we got shut down by Corona or whatever for the semester. And from there, you can see some trends. And really, that's all I wanted to see. In the off season, if we're doing like a medium intense week, a medium heavy, and a deload week into like that super compensation into a heavy week, did we super compensate? Did our Fusionetics scores kind of bump up over that deload week? Are we feeling good for maxing week or for that heavy week? Whatever the case is, I think that's where the value is in it. Especially because we don't have heart rate monitors, we don't use GPS tracking or anything like that. So you don't get to see their top speeds. We don't get to see their heart rate. Is their heart rate up because they're fatigued, because their, body's working harder to, move blood in the system because of a hard lift or a hard week or a hard bullpen, I guess. Baseball's a little different. The field sports, I'd say, and court sports, I think it's more pivotal, I guess, to have some player tracking like that. But like Fusionetics for us is something that I like, and hopefully with the budget cuts coming from Corona, hopefully we keep it. But
yeah,
can't control that. So
yeah. Well, so what I would do with volleyball and basketball, so we have the Just Jump mats. So we would do our daily vertical jump testing as a way to monitor fatigue, I guess, just the easiest way to put it. And then I'd also have them fill out a daily RPE score, which would be an RPE after practice and lifting, and then also a soreness score, which would be the same. It's how are you feeling after practice and lifting, and maybe you're still sore from 2 days prior. And like the biggest issue that I had with that is that it was hard to adjust at the right time. So like we'd see a trend after 2-3 days, whatever, and then now it's like, well, shit, we have to intervene and do something for this kid who's trending down. But at that point, it's like too late. You know what I mean? And
Right.
so I
But
don't.
I think that's the hardest part too. I think that's a hard
Yeah.
part, no matter what screening it is. And it's actually really similar. I was thinking like I can pull it up too, but like it has that soreness. It has that kind of it has those things that you're looking for. And I've seen it. So I spent some time with Coach Wagner at Texas Arlington, and she sends out like a really similar questionnaire every day, and they respond, and she puts in that information, those scores like 1 to 5 in an Excel document that she's been using for fuck how long. I have no idea. She's been in the game for a long time, but like she's been using it, and it does the same thing. So really, the reason that I like it is because it's so much easier on me,
Yeah.
because I don't have to, I don't have to come up with the algorithm to come out with a score based on how they're feeling, how they're sleeping, if they're sore, if they're not, those kinds of things. So I think that, for me, it's been a huge benefit because it at least gives me some feedback. And then
Right.
past that, like I think it's a better movement screen than FMS because it gives you, all scores are relative, but it spits
Mm-hmm.
out a score. And the first time I saw it was at North Texas, and Coach Rick used it with women's basketball, but it spits out a score, and it's like it doesn't matter whether it's 50 and you're in the red or it's 75 and you're in like the lime green. Like if we move well in the weight room with load, we're gonna move better without load. And this is the way we squat, this is the way we do a push-up, these are the we're going to get good at these things. And then when you go back to do that movement screen again, you're going to have improvement. I mean, I think our average improvement, I don't have it on that one. Our average improvement was something like 8, like, and that's a relative number, right? But 8 is almost 10%, 8%, right? So we got 8% better. We move 8% better. We had a girl that was coming off an ACL injury, and her fusionetic score or whatever, her movement score went up like 22 or 23. So if it's a score of 100, like you move 23% better. Like, yeah, okay, you're recovering from your ACL, you're down to one leg per se, but like you're moving better. I am more confident not only that you're stronger, but now like you're moving better. I hope that this doesn't happen again out on the field, right? So, I think that's where the value is in Fusionetics for me. It does both, and so
Yeah.
it's a movement screen that I like, and it's pretty simple to use. I think they actually even changed it where you can just set them up in front of the camera, and you can just have them do a squat, and it'll read it, and it'll spit it out, whatever.
Okay.
So
I think I know what you're talking about now. What
yeah. So it's
okay.
even faster, because I think I've seen the issue where, my thought on, I mean, to me, knee valgus is knee valgus, right? But like if somebody sees a little bit versus a lot, and then you kind of judge it. And, FMS, I think there's a lot of room between 1, 2, and,
Oh
3 is
yeah.
very rare, right? But like I think there's a lot of room between those. So that's why I like, a score of 1 to 100. At least we can see. So.
Mm-hmm. So you can get your whole team in with that in 20 minutes, maybe less than.
The athletic trainers have actually helped me out with it. So I think that they've done the screening. I don't know if I don't know if they'll use the camera. I assume they will. But I think, if we got 25 girls, I think that we can get them in front of a screen now, in front of a camera. And if the software is solid, you can do your squat, you can do your single leg squat. If you got to do from a side view and a front view, um, you know, I don't think that doing a whole team should take more than an hour, which is
Okay.
better, I think, than FMS can be. But like I've been around it with football, and so when we would do it with football at Delaware, we would have one guy doing this and one guy doing this and one guy, and it'd say, okay, O lineman here, D lineman here, skills, skills,
Yep.
bigs, mids. Gosh, let's split it up. However, we got to split it up. But that was the hardest part, was like, okay, you've got an army of people. That's why you can get through it, right? If you only have one, like, nah, you can't get through it. You only have the athletic trainer doing it. It's a lot harder to get through it. So I think that's kind of the hardest part with the Olympic teams, with the Olympic sports. So I'm gonna pull it up because I have it. So here, I'll just share the screen. You cool with that?
Okay. Yeah, absolutely.
So, oh, it's disabled. You want to share it or something? I don't know how to do it.
Let's see if I can do this. Share screen. I'm sharing your screen.
Yep.
Geez, I'm so bad with technology. I don't know if I
No,
have the ability to do that.
it says host disabled. Hey, it doesn't matter. It's all good. Anyways, if anybody wants to see it, let me put it this way. If anybody wants to see it,
Yeah.
you can ask, and I'll send you like screenshots or whatever. But
Yeah.
like, it's really just a way to say, okay, how do we move, and can we get better at it? And it's an unbiased thing that says, hey, when you squat, you struggle with this, and next semester when we test again, hey, you got better in this, and I, it's buy-in a little bit. If the athletes understand what they're doing and the purpose of it, I got so much like, because I said I was one of many strength coaches when I first got here. So when I was like, hey, this is the way we front squat, we don't back squat, we front squat 100%. And when we did that, and when we got here, I had a lot of guys that had a really wide, way too wide, especially if you're going to do a low bar squat and you're going to be a power lifter, fine. Be a power lifter, low bar squat, have a wide stance, sit your ass back, get your depth. You're competing, great. That's your sport. But like these baseball guys, they're not power lifters, right? So for me, I wanted to front squat with a more Olympic, narrower stance, feet, hip to shoulder width apart, slightly turned out. And your depth is your depth. I encourage guys to get as low as they can and be strong and not, have a hip tuck or anything, abnormal in those positions. But as long as you're squatting and it looks good, I don't really give a shit. So when you go back and you do this movement screen, it's like, yeah, okay, your body weight squat's better because you've been front squatting the right way this whole time. So,
does the Fusionetics, does that give like an individual assessment as far as what any sort of prehab exercises that they recommend for individuals and what to do?
It does have some it has some trying to think of the word, like, yeah, it has some recommendations.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in the grand scheme of things, if you're able to say, hey, you can get on Fusionetics, it's an app, you can get on the app and you can do some corrective exercise. That's what I was thinking. You've got some corrective exercises with videos on how to, and they prescribe it. And you want to do that because you're bored at home during coronavirus, or you've got some time on the weekends, we've got an off weekend, and you want to work on that. Yeah, absolutely. And I'll encourage people to do that. But at the same time, I think that, for us, the way that we lift, the way that we train, and the way that we warm up are all things that are going to cause us to get better in that without having to do corrective exercise. I don't need to do corrective exercise if my exercises are correct, right?
Right.
If we're going to do it right, like we don't need to change, we don't need to do all these crazy things. Occasionally we'll do a little heel lift for certain people because they've got shitty ankles, but in the grand scheme of things, we're not going to stop an entire session to have everybody do some corrective exercises. I think it's great to have, but I'm not going to spend our time doing that. We warm up really well and we go through, one of my favorites is like the world's greatest stretch, or like the Spider-Man lunge. Like, we hammer that position every single day. We'll do banded joint moves for anybody that's got some labrum issues, and our catchers especially. And, we'll get in those, we'll open up the hip sockets so that we can stay in a really upright position and squat really, really well. So,
Yeah.
I think correctives are great, but if you exercise correctly, you don't need them as much, right?
Right. So, yeah, with corrective exercises, I'm not against them by any means. If you want to do them, do them. But I think I'm trying to figure out how to word this. The purpose of training is to elicit adaptation, and I would say, I don't want to speak in absolutes, but generally for a lot of corrective exercises, are you really loading the body and performing them with enough volume and enough frequency that's going to elicit an adaptation? Right. I don't know. I don't think so when you're comparing it to squatting twice a week. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to do the correctives, do them, and you like them, awesome. If they work for you, awesome. I don't think generally our job as strength coaches is to program correctives and make that a priority. As long as we are doing what we need to do as strength coaches, which is loading the body appropriately, um, having the athletes go through the proper range of motion, whatever that is for that individual or that sport. Um, so, yeah, I mean, I don't know where I'm going. I'm just kind of echoing your point. And
No,
that,
you're good. You're good. No,
that
I agree with you. They're not bad. If you do them consistently, you'll get better at it. Like I do certain things consistently because I want to avoid having another hip labrum surgery, right?
yeah,
So I do things consistently, and I work on my ankles because they could be better, and that would help me squat without putting as much strain on my knees because I've had some patellar tendinopathy. So like I know these things. When I see athletes that have them, I have them do it as well. I'm a huge right now. I'm like, I follow a lot of and try and learn as much as I can on tendinopathy, and because my knees suck. And, so I follow knees over toes guy, and I'll do his correctives, even though it's not even, but even his aren't correctives, right? He's got his like ATG split squat.
yeah,
So that movement in itself is a split squat. So how
right,
do I coach split squats with our guys? Very similarly, I want the knees over the toes. Like, I think that is part of athleticism, and that's what happens. So we're going to work on low do a regular squat or a split squat because I encourage you to squat where your weight is over the middle of your foot. And when that happens and you have a balanced squat, your knees are going to go over your toes. You're going to work on that ankle dorsiflexion.
right,
Do I spend more time with it? But like if I have a guy that's really bad, sure, I'll give him correctives. I don't know if that's where we got down the corrective rabbit hole, but like,
yeah,
I think they're a tool, but
right,
I think, let me put it this way. I'll make it really short. I think professional baseball players, they do a lot more of that than they do loading the body. And I'm not saying that that's wrong, because if I have a guy like Garrett Cole that's worth $324 million, I don't back squat my guys, but I'm not going to load up a max back squat with him ever. I'm good. I don't need to. He's good. He's strong enough. I can elicit the same response in a trap bar deadlift. And if the guy doesn't want to trap bar deadlift, like I've got some pitchers that don't like to do it in season because they believe it'll tear their UCL or some dumb shit. It's like, well, you need to get something heavy in your hand, right? So, okay, fine. We'll do RDLs with you. Like, we'll have RDLs later, but like, we'll still squat you, but it's a front squat. It's safer on the low back. The torso is in a more upright position because it has to be. The weight is loaded over the middle of the foot or the ball of the foot more so than a back squat. And it's less strain on the low back. So that's why we front squat, right? So, I think that professional guys, if you get to that point and you're worth $300 million, shit, man, don't worry about it. I won't back squat you. I won't squat you. Like, if you're strong and we can do something to maintain that shit by doing a leg press, fuck it. Like, there's no core stabilization in a leg press, but like, more money than I'll ever see in my life ever, period, right? So,
yeah,
I think but like you've got single A guys that are, young people that may have skipped college, right? You've got guys that get drafted out of high school all the time, and high school strength conditioning programs, I think, need to be improved with at minimum a CSCS across the country. If you're going to be a high school strength coach, like and that's probably one of the things that I experienced was, I got to work at a high school, and when I was doing that, we would work our times around what football was doing in their off season. But you've got a bunch of assistant football coaches that don't know exactly what they're doing. They have a good idea, like, hey, we're going to clean, but if it's not executed and taught well, like it's just a big ass deadlift plus reverse curl, right?
yeah,
Like I'll clap at you because you can reverse curl 135, but like if you clean really well, like, and you teach them, it'll pay off. So
yeah, yeah, man. Well, wrapping up on time here. One kind of wrapping up question. I like to ask this to a lot of different people. Um, so you've been in a lot of different places. You've worked with pretty much, it sounds like a lot of sports. What is one thing that you wish you would have done when you first started as a coach that you kind of look back on, you're like, shit, I would like can't believe I did that with my athletes. What's one thing you would have changed or wish you would have known back then that you know now?
That was tough.
You can say more than one too if it's hard to narrow down on one.
I think that the number one thing that I would do different is I think that it's really important to the sooner and the faster and a good relation, like building relationships, right? So that's like as basic as I can put it. I think that when I first started, especially as an intern, I was fucking scared to death. Like I remember at Delaware, there's a handful of dudes that are in the NFL now. Like I remember the first time I saw Bilal Nichols. He's a D tackle for the Chicago Bears, right? This is a 300-pound man with a six-pack doing pull-ups like fucking nobody's business. I mean, fucking grown, right? And I'm just like, holy shit, how am I going to get to a point in my career where a dude like that asks me for advice or wants to listen to me? And I think that I was super intimidated when I first started as an intern because of that. I played baseball, but it's not, football in the weight room, it is in their DNA. And you know that. Like, it is in your fucking DNA if you're a football player that you lift weights, right? So I would say that most football players make better hands-on strength coaches right away than guys that don't, because they have more experience, hopefully with good coaches, but they have more experience in the weight room. So for me, I was so nervous and scared, and I think that it took me a long time to get to the point where I felt like I had enough knowledge to help guys that were physically better than me. And I want all my athletes to be physically better than me. Like I have no ego when it comes to, I want every single guy on my team to be able to jump higher than me, run faster than me, throw a baseball harder than me, all those things. Like that is important. I want that, right? But I think that when I was intimidated really early on, I wasn't as good at building relationships. I was nervous in certain situations to introduce myself to guys, to get to know their names, and I think that after that first internship, when I went as a GA, it really it was a good negative experience. It was a good thing to be able to look back on and be like, I need to get better at this. So all of those experiences, even North Texas for a summer, I went in and I tried to learn everybody's names as fast as I could, because I knew when I get my first assistant position, it's me. Like, it is my team from day one. It doesn't, like, I didn't get handed it off. Like, as a GA, you kind of get worked into, your teams, whatever. And so I was like, day one, I gotta be ready for this. And so, North Texas was great. It was an incredible internship, and I was way more prepared when I got here to build those relationships, to get to know the guys' names, to study the roster from last year so that I knew faces, names, and get to know them as quick as I can, and I think that I've heard it. I've had a buddy of mine say that he thinks that that's probably the hardest part of strength conditioning, is getting to know guys. And I think that, within an hour lift, you've got enough time to have a conversation with guys. And really the turning point for us, for our team, was when I convinced them that, like, I'm not leaving. Like, I know you guys have had 4 strength coaches in a year. I'm not leaving. I'm not going anywhere. I'm here. And the buy-in was instant. Like, they were totally sold in. I could have told them to jump off the roof and they would have been like, listen, that sounds like some dumb shit, but like, I'll give it a shot. Like, you're not leaving, right? You'll take me to the hospital. All right, cool, man. I'll jump off the roof, but like, when you build that, they'll fucking run through a wall for you. And I think that if I could go back and do and your question was, what would I do different for my athletes? I guess that's it. Because when you build that foundation, that trust, that do or die, ride or die, I'm here for you guys. You guys show up and do the things you need to do, and I will always be here for you guys. Like, that is something that I would have done from early on, because you can do it as an intern. And I think that that's probably the hardest thing. And, now I'm 27, so I'm older than these guys by quite a bit now. And, I think it's easier, obviously, the older you get, but I think that's probably one thing I'd do different, is just really hammer home how important it is to learn guys' names and build that trust in you and be able to do it,
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. 'Cause I'm 27 too. And so working with the basketball guys, I still like have the same sense of humor as a lot of those guys, and it's not that hard to just joke around with guys before and after lifts or even between sets during a lift. And yeah, I try to do that without crossing any boundaries or barriers,
Right. Yeah.
like
And I think,
professionalism.
so we had an intern. There's always great intern stories. But when I was a GA, we had an intern, and I think, like, yeah, he did a good job of trying to get to know the people, the athletes and stuff. But like, he took it too far and would like go and hang out with them on the weekends, right? And so
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah,
hey, you're broing out with the tennis team and you're drinking with the tennis team on Saturday, and you're a grad intern. Like, you're not an undergrad intern. Like, I get it if you're an athlete that's doing an internship, right? It's like, hey, like, they look at you, but like, you're a grad student that is an intern and you want to do this professionally. You can't go get fucked up with the tennis
yeah,
guys, right?
yeah,
You can't do that. Okay. So, obviously he didn't stay very long, but like, I think there is that fine line where, like, yes, you're a coach, and, I don't want to hear about who you're dating particularly,
right.
right? But like, I do want to know that, like, you're doing well, that, like, your family is supporting you. I think there's a lot of things like, oh gosh, it's Coach. I think it's Coach Corella, the football guy at Georgia Tech. He did a presentation last year at the conference that was it was big on like building relationships, and he has like an intro. Like, he had been at Buffalo and Georgia Tech, and he'd been at all these places like every year, right?
Hmm.
And he said, like, the first thing, or one of the things that I do is sit down and I do like a meeting with everybody. And I ask him three questions, and one of them is like, who's the most important person in your life? And he said that, like, you can ask that, like, my mom, my dad, my uncle, whatever it is, right? But you got to follow up with that. And he said that he would reach out to that mom, uncle, dad, whatever the case was, and it was like, hey, like, I am so and so strength coach, and like, I want you to know that I am out here looking for. I take their best interest at heart. Like, that's what my job is. I want to give them best that I can, and that, like, that amount of follow-up and the buy-in and the relationship, all that stuff, all that, like, conscious coaching things, I guess,
Hmm.
if you want to call
Yeah,
them variables, right? All those things, you buy it. Like, that's it, man. You got it. You've sold them completely. Like, you give a shit about them. And when you give a shit about somebody and you show it and they believe it, it's done. Like, it's over, right? So, yeah, I think that's probably, it's a people business, whether you're a personal trainer trying to make money and have clients rebuy sessions. Like, I've been there, right? But like, even more than that, like, you've got athletes for 4 to 5 years now, with Corona 6, shit, who knows? But like, you've got athletes, and you're gonna be a part of their life until you're gone, right? And you want them to trust that you've got their best interests at heart. And I think that's probably the biggest thing, is do that, and do it well, and do it quickly. Do it as well as you can, as fast as
yeah,
you can, right? Don't rush it, but it's important to do. So, and I think that's huge. And I did not appreciate that. You learn a lot of programming things. You learn, the things you learn in school. I think that's probably one thing I wish I'd known in like a better, an MS class that does kines or whatever.
right.
You got to gear it to, even if you're a physical therapist, like, you gotta get to know your patients, right? So,
Yeah,
yeah, you really got to build that relationship, and that's a huge piece. So,
yeah. Well, good stuff,
boom,
man.
long-winded answer.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you taking the time to come on here and have a conversation with me. I honestly don't think there's anything cooler than just like sharing your experiences with other people in the field and just putting your thoughts and opinions out in the open for people to criticize or agree or disagree with. And maybe, like, I don't know, that's kind of why I'm doing this. I want to put my opinions out there, and then maybe someone will disagree with me on something, and they'll like write a comment or ask to have a conversation with me and tell me why they think I'm incorrect, and then I can learn from them. And so I truly appreciate you taking the time to come out and just share your thoughts, share your experiences,
Yeah.
share like everything you kind of what you do with your team. So yeah, man, I truly appreciate you taking this time. So for anybody that wants to follow up with you, where can they find you? I know you're on Instagram. Do you have a Twitter?
I have a Twitter with like 20 followers. Yeah. Like, I got Twitter so I can follow like certain strength coaches that post more stuff on
Yeah,
Twitter, right?
yeah,
So for
yeah,
me, it's continuing education. So,
yeah.
I mean, yeah, if you want to follow me on Twitter, I probably won't tweet, but I post on Instagram a lot. I think, the athletes like to see videos of themselves. And, so I do that a lot. I like to post on there. And then, obviously if you got specific questions or anything like that, you can reach out to me,
Yeah.
just send me a DM on there and we can email back and forth, or, whatever the case is. I like you, I've been dying to do a podcast because I really, really like the ability to, from a small school say, hey, this is what we do. This is where I've been, like you said, I can always improve. I do the things we do and there's reasons that we do them. And if you want to learn or you want to correct me, please, by all means. Eric Cressy, if you're watching, like, yeah, like we can talk whenever you want. Like I'll listen any day. So I think, yeah, I'm in the same spot. So if you want to follow me, it's just if you search Coach Cam, you'll find it. It's you'll see this mug up there. So.
Awesome. Well, I'll make sure I put that in like the show notes, whatever. But yeah, man. Appreciate it once again, and maybe we'll catch up another time.
Yeah, absolutely. For sure. And thank you for reaching out.
For sure.